everyone, of all the shapes and features that are incorporated into our architecture, domes are some of the grandest of all. And from places of worship to sports stadiums and music venues, it's time to take a look through the top 15 largest domes in the world. Let's begin this one. Number 15. Pantheon, Rome, Italy. Built between the years 113 and 125 AD, the Pantheon in Rome was commissioned by Emperor Hadrian, and it's one of the best preserved Roman buildings that you'll find anywhere. It was originally a Roman temple, but later became a Catholic church, and is now an incredibly popular tourist site that sees upwards of 6 million visitors each year. It's cylindrical in shape with Corinthian columns at the entrance. The main hall of the structure has a 142-foot wide dome above it that has at the center an open oculus that lies precisely at 142 feet above the ground. Amazingly, it's been there for almost 2,000 years and remains the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome, and it's undergone surprisingly little restorative work during that time. The dome itself varies in thickness from between 21 feet at the base to almost 4 feet around the oculus, and in total it's estimated to weigh approximately 5,000 tons. Cleverly, the architects and engineers responsible for it took a number of steps to reduce its overall weight, such as using pieces of pottery and tiles in the mixture, so it weighs around 80% less than it would have done with the typical concrete used at the time. The Oculus 2, as well as being a design feature, also eliminated the need for an apex, which is the most vulnerable part of a dome, and this further reduced the weight and majorly increased its overall stability. Number 14. Florence Cathedral, Florence, Italy. Officially known as the Cattedrale di Santa Maria del Fiore, the main cathedral in Florence, Italy was built between 1296 and 1436. It's got all the classic Gothic architectural features you'd expect from a structure of that time, and when it was completed, it had the largest dome in the world. Measuring just under 150 feet in diameter, it was the first double dome structure of the Renaissance and was copied by many more designers in the period, although it itself remains the largest brick-and-mortar dome on Earth. Despite being designed for when the construction of the cathedral began, the dome was the last part to be built. So the architect responsible for it never set eyes on the finished thing. Its size posed a series of problems too, such as the fact that there wasn't enough timber in Tuscany to build the scaffolding and supports that it required, which is why it was ultimately built from brick because it's a much lighter material than marble and stone, like had originally been planned. 5 chains were also used to help spread the dome's weight evenly, and mathematical techniques seen as being centuries ahead of their times were employed to ensure the almost 40,000 tons of material, including 4 million bricks, would safely stay in place. And apart from slight wear and tear, the structure remains in remarkably good condition to this day, almost 600 years after it was finished. Number 13. West Baden Springs Hotel, Indiana. As part of the French Lick Resort Complex in the Midwestern United States, the West Baden Springs Hotel in Indiana was built in 1901 on the site of a building that had previously burned down. And one of the features the owners wanted to be incorporated into this new design was a huge dome. This proved a bit controversial, and plenty of builders said it was simply impossible. But after hiring a 500-person crew to work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, the phenomenal structure was complete in time for the first anniversary of the fire and immediately became a local landmark. Measuring 200 feet across, the covering of the atrium held the record for being the largest dome of its kind on Earth between 1902 and 1913. Described at the time as being the 8th wonder of the world, huge palm trees were grown beneath the dome along with huge custom pieces of furniture for guests to relax on. Furthermore, there was a grand fireplace in the atrium that was large enough to handle logs that measured up to 14 feet, all of which combined to provide a luxurious and one-of-a-kind experience that made the West Baden Springs Hotel a must-see for those wealthy enough to be able to stay here. It's seen as so important to America's architectural history that it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1974, and in 1987 it was designated as a National Historical Landmark. Number 12. Centennial Hall, Poland. Built between 1911 and 1913 while the city was still part of the German Empire. Centennial Hall, which is in Wrocław, Poland, was created to be a multifunctional building that could host concerts, sporting events, and theatrical and operatic performances. This required the hall to have unparalleled acoustics, so the decision was made that it should feature a huge dome above it, which, measuring at 226 feet in diameter and 75 feet high, became the largest in the world for a short time. To support the enormous weight of the structure, it was built from reinforced concrete along with steel and glass to both reduce the weight and allow light to shine in. And in the space below, there's seating for around 7,000 people. At the top of the dome at the center, there's actually what's known as a superior dome, which extends above the main one and contains a lantern to add extra light to the room. Controversially, when you look up at this feature from the inside, there's a noticeable shape of an iron cross within the main structure. It's impossible to remove without significant work, so it was simply covered over between 1947 and 1989, while Poland was under communist rule. Number 11. Royal Albert Hall, London, England. One of the most recognizable and revered buildings in the UK can be found in the district of South Kensington, which is in London, and was built between 1867 and 1871, when it was opened by Queen Victoria. Known as the Royal Albert Hall, it's mainly used for musical performances, but also for lectures and exhibitions, and it's one of the most magical venues on the planet. Part of what makes it so special is the glass and wrought iron dome that sits on top of the building, and that's 135 feet tall, and it's elliptical in shape, measuring up to 219 feet across. Its installation was a nervous moment for those responsible for completing it on time for the first scheduled concert, and to be sure that it would be sturdy enough, it was actually first built in Manchester to test it, before dismantling it and transporting it by horse and cart to London. Even with these precautions, only volunteers remained on site when it was finally erected, just in case it collapsed, and it did actually unexpectedly drop around 1/4 of an inch before settling in place. Number 10. Bojangles Coliseum, Charlotte, North Carolina. Originally constructed between 1953 and 1955 in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Bojangles Coliseum is a huge multi-purpose arena that has a seating capacity of up to 8,600 people. Known first as the Charlotte Coliseum, its main architectural feature was the huge 333-foot wide and 112-foot tall dome, which at the time of completion became the largest unsupported dome on Earth and the first free-spanning dome in the United States. In the following decades, some of the biggest acts in entertainment took to the stage there, including Elvis Presley and the Grateful Dead. It's also been a venue for various sports such as basketball, hockey, the UFC, wrestling, and many more. In 1988, a new Charlotte Coliseum opened, and this one was originally meant to be closed for good, but it soon became clear that it still had huge potential, and that it would be a shame to lose such an iconic place. Despite its age, huge upgrade programs over the years have ensured the building is structurally sound, and with modern additions like heating and cooling systems, lighting rigs, and a new ice floor, it's ready to continue being one of the major venues in the state for a long time. Number 9. Araneta Coliseum, the Philippines. Located in the Araneta City region of Quezon City in the Philippines, the Araneta Coliseum is known locally as the Big Dome, and it's one of the world's largest arenas in the whole of Asia. When it opened in 1960, it was the biggest indoor arena in the world, and its standout feature, the huge dome on top, is still the third largest dome on the continent, measuring 354 feet across. As well as being a record breaker for its size, the Araneta Coliseum also hosted some of the biggest events that have ever taken place. It was here, for example, that the Thrilla in Manila took place in 1975, when Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier fought. It's also been the venue for more than 1,000 games of the Philippine Basketball Association. As such an iconic place, tens of millions of dollars have been spent on upgrading the infrastructure in the past 2 decades to retain its place as one of the leading venues in Asia. And as anyone who's been there will tell you, pictures really don't do it justice, with the sheer size of the dome only really being clear as you're walking up towards it. Number 8. Belgrade Fair Hall 1, Belgrade, Serbia. First opened to the public in 1957, the Belgrade Fair Hall No. 1 is the largest exhibition space in the Belgrade Fair, which is a huge complex in Belgrade, Serbia. It's a spectacular building that's topped with a dome and held the record for having the largest dome in the world for 8 years until 1965. Measuring 358 feet across, it remains the largest freestanding dome in Europe, and it's also the biggest in the world that's made from pre-stressed concrete. Located on the bank of the Sava River that flows through Belgrade, it's a picturesque and easily accessible place, and with the building split into a basement, an arena, a ground floor, and a first and second floor balcony, there's almost always an event being hosted here. It's mainly used for large exhibitions, but it's also a popular place for some of the world's biggest musicians to play, not just because it has one of the largest capacity arenas in Europe, but also because the dome gives it warm acoustics that are rarely found elsewhere. There are concerns, however, about the hall's long-term outlook, as it wasn't built with longevity in mind. Plans are currently underway to upgrade it to be fit for the future, but this is expected to be such a costly exercise that the investment is still to be secured. Number 7. State Farm Center, Champaign, Illinois. Owned by the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, the State Farm Center is a huge 15,000-seat indoor arena that's in the city of Champaign, Illinois. It was originally known as the Assembly Hall from when it opened in 1963 until 2013, and is mainly used to host the university's basketball and wrestling, as well as numerous other performances and events. It is the third largest arena in Illinois, and its huge dome measures 400 feet across, which made it the largest dome in the U.S. until 1965. Amazingly, the center uses 614 miles worth of quarter-inch steel wire that's wrapped around the base of the dome under extreme pressure to support its weight of just over 5,000 tons. It's made of pure concrete, and it was initially cast in 24 different segments that were then lifted and fitted into place. And the techniques used to post-tension it with steel wire were originally developed for the construction of the Titan missile bases. Once this was all completed, it was then covered in 3 coats of plastic, which ensured that it's waterproof and can endure virtually any weather that it's subjected to. The recent sponsorship by State Farm Insurance, which saw the building renamed, is worth a reported $2 million per year for 30 years, the vast majority of which will actually be used to upgrade the structure's foundation and technology to continue being an important venue in the region. Number 6. Astrodome, Houston, Texas. The NRG Astrodome in Houston, Texas claims to have been the world's first multi-use dome sports stadium after opening in 1965. Home to the Houston Astros Major League Baseball team until 1999 and the Houston Oilers NFL team until 1996, it was originally nicknamed the Eighth Wonder of the World because of the 710-foot diameter dome that sits 208 feet above the playing surface. The construction of the dome was a challenge that was arguably ahead of the techniques available at the time and required the development of new methods to be possible. The dome was, for example, slightly flattened so it would withstand the pressures from environmental changes, and a new paving process known as lime stabilization was used on the soil to help it accommodate the overall weight. The use of the dome, too, had an unexpected effect on the playing surface and was partly responsible for all the grass dying because of the lack of sunlight. This meant that the Astrodome became the first major sports venue to be fitted with artificial grass, which would eventually become known as AstroTurf. While it's no longer the largest dome structure in Texas, the Astrodome has such a history that efforts are now underway to modernize it, although with the costs of doing this expected to run into the hundreds of millions of dollars, the venue is unfortunately currently closed because of a number of safety code violations. Number 5. Caesars Superdome, New Orleans, Louisiana. Opened in 1975 as the Louisiana Superdome and now known as the Caesars Superdome, it is the largest fixed-dome structure in the world. It cost the equivalent of $675 million to build in the first place and has since had a further $260 million spent on renovations, all of which has ensured the steel structure is one of the premier sports stadiums in the country. The dome on top of the structure measures 680 feet across, and as the home of the New Orleans Saints, it's hosted about 7 Super Bowls, with an 8th planned in 2025, and set its record attendance of just over 78,000 people in 2018 at WrestleMania 34. What the Superdome is probably best known for around the world, though, is that it was used as the shelter of last resort in 2005 when Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans, with around 10,000 people seeking shelter there. During the planning process, the designers knew that there was the potential for the Superdome to be subjected to a powerful storm, and that's why the dome itself was made from steel and was said to be able to withstand wind speeds of up to 200 miles an hour. Hurricane Katrina was actually the 3rd time the stadium had been used for this purpose, with the same also happening during Hurricane George in 1998 and Hurricane Ivan in 2004, and is a clear example of how important structures like these can be to local communities beyond their ability to host large-scale events as entertainment venues. Number 4. Showa Denko Dome, Oita, Japan. After opening in 2001, the Showa Denko Dome Oita, which is in Oita, Japan, became one of the most impressive sports stadia on the planet. Designed to host a variety of different events, it's mainly used as the home venue for Oita Trinita, a second-division Japanese soccer club. It was originally conceived as a futuristic stadium for the 2002 FIFA World Cup that was held in South Korea and Japan. And known as the Big Eye, it became famous for its huge dome that measures 899 feet across. Rather than being a permanent feature though, this dome is retractable and is driven by a wire traction system, a design feature that was chosen because it gives the teams the option to play in the open air and also helps with maintenance of the turf on the pitch. Number 3. AT&T Stadium, Arlington, Texas. As the home of the Dallas Cowboys, the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas is undoubtedly one of the most recognizable stadiums in the United States. It was built at a cost of $1.6 billion. This current stadium replaced the previous one and was completed in 2009. Far from just being a football stadium, the intent was always that it would be one of the most spectacular entertainment venues in the world, and as part of that design, it was fitted with a retractable domed roof. When closed, it measures 902 feet across, and it reaches a maximum height of 300 feet. Owned by the city of Arlington, it's the largest capacity NFL stadium and has gone on to host countless high-profile events, from basketball, soccer, and boxing to wrestling, supercross, and rodeos, and countless musical shows too. Depending on the event, the stadium can be adapted, with it taking a surprisingly short amount of time to either open or close the roof, and the further ability to open each end to further increase capacity. Number 2. Singapore National Stadium, Kallang, Singapore. First opened in June of 2014 and built on the site of a former stadium, the Singapore National Stadium in Kallang, Singapore is a huge 55,000-seat multi-purpose venue. That's the home of Singapore's national soccer team and is the central feature of the Singapore Sports Hub project. Built with a retractable dome roof that measures 1,017 feet across, it holds the record for having the largest self-supported dome on Earth and incorporates a number of features to make the playing surface as perfect as possible in the country's changing climate. The roof itself covers an area of 810,000 square feet. It's made of steel and reaches a maximum height of 272 feet. It was specifically designed to reflect sunlight, which insulates the interior while also encouraging natural airflow to keep spectators cool at just a fraction of the cost that other stadiums need for the same effect. This stadium has brought different configurations for soccer, rugby, athletics, and cricket, with adjustable seating that can be brought forward over the running track when it's not in use. It takes just 48 hours to change the layout, and as well as being used for sports, it's also the largest capacity entertainment venue in the country too, which means all of the biggest musical artists perform there during their world tours. Number 1. The O2, London, UK. To celebrate the beginning of the year 2000, countries around the world spent vast sums on extravagant projects. And as part of those celebrations, the UK government spent around $1.5 billion to build the Millennium Dome on the Riverside in London. Looking like a large white tent, it has 12 yellow support towers, each of which is 330 feet or 100 meters high, and these hold the dome-shaped canopy in place that's 170 feet or 52 meters high, to represent 1 meter for each week in the year, and is 1,200 feet or 365 meters in diameter, to represent 1 meter for each day of the year. Opened on New Year's Eve 1999, the interior was full of various exhibitions that organizers hoped would attract people from all over the world, but ultimately, the project failed to live up to expectations. For a few years, it was seen as one of the most expensive failed construction projects ever, until it was redeveloped as an entertainment district in 2005 and renamed after a sponsorship deal with a telecommunications provider. Today, the O2 features a 20,000-seat arena, various other venues, spaces, and food and shopping districts. It's also one of the most successful multi-event venues in the world. There's such a regular slate of programming here that it sells more tickets each year than Madison Square Garden and remains the 8th largest structure in the world in terms of usable volume. I'll see you next time.
Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.